Welcome to the end of the week stock market review. We're going to go over all the indices and how they perform throughout the week, and we'll be starting here with the ES on the weekly time frame. Let's get into it. So, looking here at previous times that we pushed up to this plus 3 ATR, we always usually get this reversion back down to the mean. That happened here, held to 21, get that push back up into that plus 3, and then we got that reversion here last week. This week, we pushed right off of that reversion back to the mean and are getting close once again to breaking those all-time highs. So it was a good week on the market as a whole. We got a bullish histogram back here, which is showing strength as well. So this weekly time frame is still holding structure beautifully, just like I said it could potentially do last week on my overview. So this one is looking very good on that weekly chart. Now if we go to a daily chart, break it down a little bit more. So we can see we basically held that 50 simple moving average and kind of bounced off of that level to the upside. Still haven't really broke out above that plus 1 ATR region, but that is, I think, because we are forming this new low compression daily squeeze on the ES itself here. So we could see a potential consolidation between this 21 EMA and that plus 1 ATR as it builds up that momentum. And once we break that plus 1 ATR, I think that this squeeze will then just propel it past these levels of previous all-time highs, and we could potentially make new all-time highs. So definitely keep your eye on this squeeze on the ES, because everything about it is looking like it's going to fire to that upside. We have our stacked DMAs, we're holding above that 21 EMA, and we're getting these yellow bars, which means it is gaining bullish momentum. Ideally want to see this light blue bar next week, which will show us that bullishness is here, and it should see a continuation to that upside, just like it did here in the past. And now if we move on here to the Qs, we can pull up that weekly chart as well. Basically the same story here as the ES. Didn't actually get all the way down to the 21 EMA, but got pretty close to it here. Came off of those extended levels, nice reversion, pushed right back up to the upside here. So this weekly time frame for the Qs still looks very bullish as well. Now if you look at the daily time frame, I really like this one a lot along with the ES. The Qs and ES definitely look like the best indices in my opinion here. If we look, we are getting this nice daily squeeze, starting to gain a little bit of bullish momentum here. Ideally want to see those light blue bars in the histogram and that histogram above that zero line. But the thing I like about it most is that we came up to that plus 1 ATR, rejected it, and held that 21 EMA basically perfectly here on the Qs, and then bounced off those levels here today. Expecting this to hopefully continue to that upside. We do have our stacked TMAs, which is bullish. We're holding structure here, so everything about this is leading me to believe that this should eventually fire to that upside. Does not mean it has to, but its structure is holding very nicely. Now if we go on to the Dow, we can look at this weekly time frame as well. This one was looking a little more ugly compared to the other indices, as it was breaking below that 21 EMA 2 weeks in a row, but this week had a lot of strength with it here, as you can see with this weekly candle just straight up here. And we also are having this weekly squeeze gaining that bullish momentum here on the squeeze, which could potentially fire this one as well to the upside, giving us new all-time highs here on the Dow. So this structure did definitely reclaim itself being bullish, which I really like to see here. We do have our stacked DMAs, and everything about this weekly time frame is looking to fire to that upside, which I think will give us a few more weeks of strength on the Dow. Could see it though first revert back down to that 8 EMA potentially before firing, so definitely keep an eye on that. Now if we come here to the daily time frame, we can see if there's anything going on with this one. We do have our stacked DMAs, unfortunately in a deceleration stage, but I think next week that will come out of that into hopefully an acceleration stage if that weekly squeeze can start to fire. We do not have any sort of squeeze that is forming here. If we do start to consolidate between this 21 EMA and that +1 ATR, then I think one will form, but this one could just start pushing here without it. So definitely keep your eye on that weekly squeeze and then see if this daily time frame will align with that, with starting to push up to these previous all-time highs. Next one I'm looking at here is the Russell, and the Russell is definitely the most bearish looking indice compared to all the other ones, as they look quite bullish in my opinion. Now if we look here on the weekly time frame, it has held this previous support that it had when it was in this large consolidation period due to it being in this squeeze. It has held that level and kind of bounced off of it, but it's still rejecting that weekly 21 here. So everything about this one isn't really looking too strong in my opinion. As long as it can continue holding this support level, I think it could ping back and forth between these resistance lines up here and then the supports here, as it did for those previous months before. So definitely keep your eye out on that. We also do have this weekly squeeze. The histogram is above the 0 line, but with price trading below the 21, it has a higher likelihood of firing to that downside. Ideally would like this squeeze to start showing some more bullish momentum here and some closes above the 21 EMA for the small caps to potentially make a continuation to the upside. So definitely keep your eyes on that. Now if we look at the daily time frame, this could tell us a little bit more about what's going on here. So we get this large flush down to these -3 ATR, which is our very extended levels. We get this reversion to the mean perfectly, and then we reject that mean. So that's showing me that the small caps have some pretty strong weakness here, as we couldn't even get one close above the 21 EMA on the daily and basically rejected it perfectly to that downside. Now we don't have any squeeze or anything really setting up here. Our histogram is below that 0 line though, and we are rejecting that 21 EMA. We have no stacked EMAs and are in a deceleration stage, which is just showing me that this one is more bearish than any of the other indices. And if I wanted to play something long, it definitely would not be a small cap. It would more be something in tech or something in the ES. Now, another thing I want to focus on here, and I've been talking a lot about it, is the VIX. So here, let me clean up this chart a little bit. Okay, perfect. Zoom in a little bit. So as I said before, we got this large volatility spike. It held this previous resistance and then fell off of it. We came down to this $20 region, and this is where I wasn't sure exactly where the market was going to go. I said we could either head up to around the 25, which would be a resistance, or we could fall down to around that 15 level, which is a support. When on Thursday we got that bounce off of it to the upside, I thought we were potentially going to go up here and start to retest this resistance. Today had other plans, and we broke through this $20 mark, and it looks like we're going to start coming back down to this $15 level, which is a great healthy place for this market to be for a continuation to the upside. So I do really like this break on that VIX to the downside. We're also getting this daily squeeze is losing that momentum, so we could see, yes, some more selling of the VIX here to that downside, which should give the market more upside. Another thing to look at here on the VIX, let's clean this one up as well, makes it a little easier to see. Alrighty. No, I don't want to delete it. Alrighty. So another thing to look at here is the weekly chart of the VIX. It was getting a little scary with this squeeze, looking to potentially fire to the upside, but this week did give us a darker blue bar, which means it is losing bullish momentum, and with that close below that $20 mark, I really do like this overall market as a whole to continue to the upside, and then accompanied with those daily squeezes, I think that the overall market, and especially the ES and the NQ, could see new all-time highs here potentially next week, if not the week after, just due to their structures looking very bullish in my opinion. So this is the weekly review. Hopefully it gives you all a better understanding of where our markets are at and what we could potentially see here in the next few weeks. Have a great weekend, everyone.